And we have one more art to celebrate before we get to the announcement about the poster contest winner. And that is one of the oldest arts in recorded time, really, and that is the craft of storytelling. Passing of knowledge has been a means of survival for all of us over these many millennia. Storytelling was the ultimate form of self-preservation and is still practiced in all parts of the globe, no matter how remote they are. Cheryl Hamilton is with us tonight, and she is a seasoned storyteller who has perfected the craft of storytelling. She can be heard throughout New England, from Massmouth and the Moth gatherings to events such as tonight's reception. And in fact, on June 20th, make note of this, June 20th, which is World Refugee Day, she will be storytelling in the city of Boston, and I'm sure that you can get more information about that and should. So without further ado, please welcome Cheryl Hamilton.
So I'm standing in downtown Nairobi, Kenya, outside this nondescript building with a peach-colored walls and brown iron door. From the outside, it looks like every other ordinary building in the nation's capital. But it's not ordinary. It's extraordinary. It's the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Departure Center, the last stop where refugees go before they board the buses that will take them to the airport where they'll be resettled to countries worldwide. I'm standing in downtown Nairobi, Kenya, because 15 years ago, 5,000 Somali refugees moved into my hometown of Lewiston, Maine. Changed my life forever. I was supposed to go to Africa, but as my mom likes to say, Africa came to me. 5,000 Somali refugees, again, in my hometown. And you see, I was hired to help manage that migration, to help refugees get jobs and enroll in English classes and find housing. And eventually, that job led me to the same job traveling around the country, helping other cities find out how to help refugees get jobs and housing and education. But there was always a nagging part of me that wanted to see the circumstances that Somalis lived through before they came to the US, so I could be a better cultural liaison. So here I am, standing in a parking lot, holding the hand of a young Ethiopian boy who's about to be resettled to Seattle. He hasn't seen his parents for 6 years. The last time they were together was at a party at their parents' home where they were having a big celebration to honor a huge harvest that their family had had. They were all agriculturalists and farmers. Unfortunately, the government of Ethiopia, well, when all these families got together, they assumed that they were launching some sort of political uprising, and they stormed the home, and they grabbed his parents at gunpoint and pulled them out of the home. The young boy and his brothers and his grandmother fled the next day into the forest and eventually walked their way into Nairobi, where they've been living on the streets for the last 8 years, selling scrap metal to survive. But tomorrow, they're going to Seattle. He asked me what Seattle's going to be like, and suddenly I don't really know what to say. I mean, I visited it once. I told him that, well, there's a lot of coffee, like here in Kenya. And there's a fish market. They throw fish at you. I don't know. By the time I got to the Space Needle, I wasn't sure he even wanted to go to Seattle. But then I told him, it's great. You're going to be able to go back to school and play sports, and it's really nice, and you're going to have a better life. So he and I walked into the departure center, and immediately it is bustling with activity. In every corner are families from across East Africa, Somalis, Sudanese, Ethiopians, Eritreans, all anxiously waiting for their last security clearances to pass so that they can board that bus and again go to the airport. But as I look down in front of me, there's this long line of suitcases, and each of them has a gigantic piece of masking tape on it with the name of the family, their case number, and their destination. San Diego, California, Sydney, Australia, Paris, France, and there, 4 suitcases back, it's this small black duffel bag with a piece of masking tape that says, Lewiston, Maine. And I lose my mind. Whose bag is this? Whose bag is this? Suddenly, nobody wants to claim the bag from the screaming white woman. I try to calm myself down, and I call over an interpreter, and I explain the situation. I'm like, that's from my hometown. You have to find the family. she smiles, and she starts a train of whispers that weaves its way through the crowd until it lands on a woman in the back row wearing a blue hijab. I run back to her and I say, "You're going to my hometown! You're going to my hometown!" She looks confused, and then the interpreter translates, and she starts to smile. I tell her how happy I am for her, that I love Maine. It has these gorgeous mountains, and there's the ocean, and great schools, and summer camps. I tell her just how happy I am for her. I don't tell her that 15 years ago, when the 5,000 Somali refugees arrived, the mayor wrote a letter to the newcomers that essentially said they weren't welcome. The last line of his letter that was posted on the front page of the local paper and then repeated in the New York Times and BBC and ABC said that our city was maxed out, financially, emotionally, and physically maxed out, and they should stop coming. And when that happened, it attracted national hate groups to our hometown that would litter the elementary school parking lots with pieces of crossword puzzle that, once completed, celebrated people like Hitler and the Aryan race. I don't tell her that my best friend said that I helped terrorists for a living, or that I was written about in a blog and called a mud lover. I don't tell her these things because, well, it's not Lewiston today. I mean, it's not perfect, but 15 years later, there's 50 Somali-owned businesses in Lewiston, 5 Somali nonprofits. You know those LL Bean boots that were woven by hands of my grandmother? Now they're being woven by hands of people worldwide, including Somalis. And perhaps our favorite is that last year, the soccer team, it won the state championship for the first time in 40 years because the 5 starting players, well, they grew up together in a refugee camp in Kenya. They're quite the team. Instead, I just say to her, "So, do you know anybody in Lewiston?" Totally expecting her to say no. Instead, she says yes. She says her husband. And I'm like, "Really?" And I ask for his name, and suddenly, this fast-talking, loud white woman is silenced. She says the name of the 3rd Somali man I met in Lewiston and one of my first coworkers. Suddenly, our conversation is interrupted by Joseph. He's calling my name, and when I look back, he's so cute. He's wearing this terrible 1970s brown corduroy suit that someone in the neighborhood gave him, you know, with the big brown buttons and the vest. Someone thought that he should look smart for the trip. Well, his security clearance has passed, and he's picking up his suitcase, and he starts to make the way to the bus. As I meet him at the door, I look at him, and I say, "Be nice and study hard." At the same time, I look back, and the woman with the blue hijab, she also picks up her suitcase. She's also passed, and her children, and they start to make their way to the bus. And as I look at her as she starts to board, I say, "I'll see you at home, our home." Thank you.